Hi there, me again. Punching power, part 2. So, as you can see, thanks to frost damage on my wooden dummy, I have severely reconstructed it. In other words, I just buried the whole corpus in the earth. Now it's no longer as big. It's in the earth, surrounded and fastened by gravel of this kind. I made a hole in the earth, put some gravel in, put the trunk on top of it, some more gravel, put a swim noodle around it, some more gravel, another swim noodle, and the rest is gravel. And this combination of swim noodles and gravel, as you see, gives it a very slight, not much, but a slight bit of give, and thus it is not quite a dead dummy, as the Chinese would say. It's a very hard spring, so shall we call it an undead dummy? Sorry, I had to make that joke. Now, at any rate, punching power. What are the constituents of punching power? And in my intro video, I already showed a lot of training methods without explaining a lot of what they are good for or why they are necessary. And I skipped the good stance part and said there are enough videos about good stances. I have one myself. But of course now we must go a little bit more into the good stance. Because the first thing you obviously need to have punching power is correct bodily alignment, so that, for instance, to give you a simple example, the wrist won't buckle, and so that we do not punch in a way that completely disperses my power all over the place instead of focusing it right where I want it. So we need bodily alignment. And of course, first we practice the technique in the dry. And if that is halfway decent, then the next thing we need is to really transfer the power between here to the ground. I mean, in Hung Gar Kung Fu, the whole thing between here and down to my heels is called the bridge. So it is bridge arms, bridge body, bridge legs, bridge heels, if you will. And the training method that I would recommend is, like I said, something that I picked up from Jack Dempsey's book, Finding the Power Line. And basically that is without too much pressure, basically using leaning and your body weight. You find the exact position, starting from exactly how you curl your fist, how much you turn your fist, like this, like this, like this. What is the right position? What is the position of your wrist, of your elbow, your shoulder, so that the arm won't buckle. You see, here it buckles. Here I cannot really hold it unless I really use muscle. Here, I throw the arm out in a totally relaxed fashion. So I use just this body turning motion and leave my arm completely relaxed. Nonetheless, nothing buckles. And that is what I want to find out. And Jack Dempsey advises to find this, he calls it the power line, for all the punches you are using, and to always explore the power line over time, over months, over years, and finally find all the power lines that will actually work for you until hitting with a sound power line becomes second nature. And until you reach the point where you cannot hit wrong. In the sense that, and this is the same thing as grasping a cup of tea, drinking it and putting it back. You have done it so often that it is impossible to do it wrong. Or think of a drunkard who is too drunken to even have his own name, but who still swigs up his whiskey glass with one swig, drunken as he is, not spilled one drop, and drinks it down. So practiced is the movement. And while the drunkard except for the proponent of drunken kung fu. Sorry, I had to say that. Well, the drunkard is a bad example health-wise. It exemplifies what I mean. Even under very adverse conditions, we must find the power line. And like I said, we start out by finding, I mean, everyone knows how to curl a fist, right? Take the hand like this, curl the fist, roll it, and I'll wrap the thumb around it. Let me check this close up. So, curl, curl, and put the thumb over it, right? Now that is the 80% of how to make a fist correctly. But now, what you need to do is find the exact position of every finger. Because if you do it wrong, you still roll your knuckles in, roll your fingers in, and there is potential for injury. Or potential for us to fear impact and not hit with the full power. So, fear of hitting with full power is a good part of what is being dispelled by finding the power line. You really want to have that line where it runs the power runs smoothly around your bones or along your bones, without any buckling. And since no two humans are alike, no two humans have the exact right or identical landing position. So, whatever martial arts school you are from, be that Wing Chun, be that karate, be that bare knuckle boxing, what you learn in the form in the dry is a rough idea, and you have to hone that on something that has no give. So my recommendation is to use, first of all, an obstacle like a wooden dummy that has no give. Alternatively, you can of course also use a wall and stuff. And in China they use the so-called wall bag. They fill it with rice. In bare knuckle boxing we use the maize bag filled with maize. Something that is cushioned enough and has only the give that is in the cushion. So no heavy bag that swings away, that stuff comes later. First of all, you really want to find the position. And once you have the position, see, this is all positioned right now, but it is all very loose. Now, we not only want to have a good position, or a good posture rather than position, a good posture, now we also want a rock solid body frame. And that is where my other exercise comes in, the isometric pressing against this. And you do not need to hold back, because this way you use all the right muscles that you exactly would use in order to support this punch. So, first of all, you learn how to not buckle just by positioning your joints correctly, and then you learn how to put the full force of your muscles into it. And like I said, no need whatsoever to hold back. The dummy or the wall holds you back, or the door frame, whatever you use as an immovable object. That is doing the holding back. So that way you learn to relax all the muscles you don't need and only tense up those muscles that you need. Now, if you go for isometric training, you know that every 15 degrees or so, different parts of the same muscle are used. So, if, say, you go for a punch like this, which, or like, shall we call it a cross, yeah? A straight, rather a hybrid between a Wing Chun straight punch and a boxing cross, something like that. If you do that, that is why you start out almost with the starting position. Relax, go a bit more. Go a bit more. And go a bit more again. That way, with a relaxed part, you find the power line. With a tensing up isometric part, what you find is, or what you do is, you strengthen your body frame to really pack some oomph, because later on such a solid body frame comes in handy. Now there is one thing we still tend to hold back when we start this kind of isometric exercise. If you watch my left foot carefully, when I'm pressing in here, my left foot doesn't lift off the ground, which means I'm holding back. Because if I'm really putting it into it, you see, I'm easily lifting myself up off the ground. And that is what we want, because we have now the line of power, we have the robust body frame, and soon we will get to power generation systems. And of course, the most obvious power generation system is body rotation, torque. But the other is used in many martial arts. Again, I will quote the great Jack Dempsey, who made the drop step famous. You use gravity, your body weight falling forward. And if you, I have another video on this, if you listen carefully, this is, my fist lands a split second before my foot lands. So this, when my foot is still in the air, is the position where I transfer power. Sometimes you lose it, which means your alignment isn't completely perfect. So you can play around a lot with this, making your body stronger, specifically for the punch. Find and hone and fine-tune your exact line of power. And that takes some months. This is not so much conditioning in the classical sense, this is learning. Learning to get it exactly right. A little bit like finding balance when learning to ride a bicycle. And when you've done that with one punch, you do it with the other. And with all the kinds of punches you want to do. Now, I said, if you go for the real punching conditioning, use some padding. I have a heavy-duty rubber mat used to put on the laundry machines and stuff. Ubiquitous duct tape, a part of a yoga mat, and more duct tape, as many of us will probably have. This is a very hard padding, not suitable for beginners. You should have 2 or 3 yoga mats if you begin this kind of stuff. Like I said, the man who goes slower goes much longer. But before we go there, to this kind of stuff, we are better suited to first start out, because this is almost a makiwara padding in the effect it has. Before we start out, I suggest the maze bag. And before we actually hit the bag, remember we have already the power line. The bag has a different dynamics than an immovable object. The bag is quite mobile and movable. If you don't want that, put another strap on here and fix it. I find it beneficial that this bag isn't completely immobile. That way, whenever my power line isn't quite right, it goes away, and I know I have feedback that I still didn't get my power line right. And finding your power line is most crucial. Now, what you obviously have to learn is simply the technique of your punch. So, just the power delivery system, you know, which is what I assume you know from your school. So, turning the hips, generating some push from your leg, letting it turn the hips, letting it turn the shoulders, extend, go out, snap back. And now we don't rush, we don't stop pounding the thing. Nah. Because bare knuckle, there is still a great risk of injury if our wrists are not bound. So now we start it with a slow motion, and now in exactly that position we go for the isometric exercise, and you see I didn't get my line right. So again, here we go. only when I know how to land, when there is no wobbling at all, then I slowly throw it out in a more ballistic fashion, but not too ballistic, so not caliber 50, more a caliber 22, a very light caliber 22 ballistics. So just tapping the wall back until you know, or the maze back, until you know that your landing is solid. You can test the landing now on something that resists a little bit more, but this is again not for conditioning, this is for testing if your alignment is correct. And as you see, with this arm I'm just relaxed swinging out, so this is not yet for combat, because for combat it would obviously have to look more like this. So this is still a very relaxed thing to test. Alignment is key. If have no alignment, you have no power. Or if you have power, you have just the power to injure yourself. And if we have got that alignment right and tested, now we start hitting heavier. And the first thing we do is we hit on our ideal height. So no testing up, which in case of my new dummy construction would be a little bit difficult for me. No testing for body shots yet. Martial arts is a progression of first doing it under ideal condition and then making it more and more difficult, putting more and more pressure on the practitioner and making conditions less and less ideal and still get the result. But if you cannot get the result under ideal conditions, making it more difficult makes no sense, right? So, and my ideal height is just my own shoulder height. So this is where I will hit. If you go very traditional Kung Fu like, you should use a linen bag or some natural material and put beans into it. The beans have about the right consistency if rightly packed, and it should have some give but not too much to start out for conditioning. Plus the beans seem to have some medical properties, or at least I have heard rumors, or maybe even read some articles along that line. I mean, for conditioning again, use Pt2 before and after the conditioning practice, and don't go too much. But like I said, now that you have the I'm getting ahead of myself. Now that we have the alignment, now we hit. And once we can pack a decent, not yet good, but decent enough punch, we can start to do it in a more combative manner, and that now the arm doesn't swing back, unless maybe you do Charlie fat, and the swinging back is part of the technique. But let's stay with our Western boxing. So you keep your guard up now. Every now and then, test your power line by isometrically pushing. Test if it is really powerful, and hit. Now this hitting goes on for a while.